Taking notes in class is a really important way to create a study guide that you can use to track your success while you are attending a course. You want to take notes to make predictions about concepts or ideas that you are learning. You want to set some listening objectives in your notes in advance of class to monitor your attention and make sure that you're able to focus and listen to what's happening and understand what's happening. You do want to support your memory. You want to understand how ideas are connected to one another. You also want to track your progress and keep track as well of difficulties, so difficult material or other things that may potentially throw you off track. So when you're tracking those things, it can help you to monitor and understand how well you are learning something. You don't want to take word-for-word notes. That's not a great way of tracking information. You always want to listen actively, and you do want to plan your note-taking method in advance. You want to avoid habits such as rewriting your notes, copying notes from other students, or copying information straight from textbooks without listening to them or talking about them or reading them to understand them first. Basically, you don't want to be copying anything word for word unless it's important and unless you understand it. So you do need to use your notes to study, so they have to be useful. And you want to, however, avoid memorizing your notes. So that's a bit of a fine balance there, but it takes a little bit of practice and some good habits. You also want to avoid highlighting all of your notes or highlighting parts of textbooks. The only way that you should be highlighting, or the only reason you should be highlighting, is to code information. For example, you can choose one color of highlighter for all main ideas in your notes. But what you don't want to do is just randomly go through and color everything as you're reading. That's not a good use of your time, and it doesn't help you to organize or sort through information. Really, you could also use it to help navigate your notes, but generally speaking, if you're writing your notes and they are effective notes, you will understand how they are organized. So you can choose to use technology or you can choose to handwrite your notes. There are benefits and drawbacks to both. Of course, do what's best for you. More recent research does support the idea that handwritten notes are more effective for the people who write their own notes. But however, take this information as you need to. Just keep that in mind. But use the note-taking method that suits you best. So again, some technology considerations. There are a lot of tools out there that can help you to organize your information. So even if you're not using technology to actually write your notes, what you can do is choose to use some software to keep your notes organized. Whether you are using digital or technology-based items to organize your notes, or whether you are using a binder with paper notes, either is fine as long as it's organized in a way that allows you to get into your notes quickly, use them, and navigate them fairly efficiently. Again, you want to make sure you are listening actively in class, so you choose the best spot for you. Maybe that's up front, maybe it's in the back. It's really up to you. Remove those distractions from your surroundings. So sometimes sitting in the front is, the least, the thing we want to do the least, but it's the thing that maybe we should do. You can plan to take breaks. You want to make good eye contact with your instructor. You do want to have some notes planned in advance so that you can decide, those points are going to be your listening points. So you can decide whether they are relevant material for learning in your course or if they're not. But either way, they give you a good baseline for listening and tracking what's happening in class. And then try to always think about how the information is connected to what you listened and learned in the last class. Watch out for those verbal cues that professors might give you. So if they say initially, then, and finally, really that means first, second, and third, or the three most important things. So get used to listening for those. Go to YouTube, search for some sample lectures. I'm sure you can find them on there. Not for fun, but to get used to listening for those verbal cues. Once you're familiar with them, you can hear them a little bit more efficiently, and it just helps you to be better with taking the notes because then you know what the most important pieces of information actually are. And watch your professors. If they give really interesting facial expressions when they're explaining something, or if they're very animated and excited during a certain part, or if they keep repeating something, usually those are cues that tell you, as a listener and a note taker, that the information that they're stressing or highlighting is important for you. This is the Cornell note-taking template. This is my preferred method for taking notes. I am not going to explain this template in this video, but we can go through that another time. Here is the Cornell template with some ways of also organizing the information in the notes. So notice that a focus is always on identifying main ideas and supporting ideas. So you can do that using the outline method and text, or you can do it in a diagram or a matrix, but it really depends on what you're organizing. So before class, it's always a great idea to preview your material in your textbook, and by looking at the content on Moodle to get an idea, and of course looking at your course outline or your course syllabus to get an idea of what the learning objectives are for you as a student. That way you can identify or likely identify the most important ideas in advance of class. Just an example of a template for outlining. And finally, you do want to practice taking notes in advance of taking notes. So again, it's a skill, and if you try to learn to take notes while you're listening in class, you won't be as effective as if you can plan a note-taking method and template and try it out in class while you're learning new content. And then you can think and reflect afterwards to see if it worked well for you. Practice creating some annotations, which are short little written notes and abbreviations that you can quickly use to document important pieces of information. Again, practice those in advance, and when you need to use them, you can quickly use them and not worry too much. Always read your notes after class, and definitely in advance of the next class. Add your note-taking preparation to your weekly study routine. If you don't set aside the time, you won't get into the habit of doing this. Essentially, your notes are used to self-test and to monitor your progress. Are you learning everything you need to learn? And also you can identify challenging content. Usually that's the content you can take to your professor or tutor or supplemental instructor and say, hey, I'm having difficulty. Here are the specific parts of my course that I'm having difficulty with, and that can really save you time. It can make the most of your tutoring or session with your professor and really help you to, understand exactly what you need to understand. So much better than just saying, I don't understand. If you take very good notes, think about being a note taker for other people. And even if you need a note taker, you should always take your own notes. If you have a note taker who's taking verbatim notes for you, that's great. But then you can focus on taking down examples or organizing the ideas in a graphic organizer or a mind map. As always, if you have difficulty taking notes or organizing information for studying, contact your learning strategist. Thank you.